Today, I want to tell you about something that happened in Mississippi. On a cold December morning in 1994, the residents of a quiet neighborhood in Horn Lake were jolted awake by a powerful explosion. When they rushed outside in a panic, they saw their neighbor's house completely engulfed in flames. Fire trucks came screaming down the street. Firefighters rushed inside, hoping to save whoever was trapped in there. They found a woman on the floor beside her bed, 47 years old. She did not make it out. At first, everyone assumed it was a tragic accident, a horrible twist of fate. The whole community mourned. This woman was well loved. She had survived so much in her life: cancer, divorce, years of struggle, and now this. But something about that fire was not right, and the truth about what really happened that night would take years to uncover. So settle in, because this story is about greed, betrayal, and the people we trust the most. Hi, sweet ones. My name is Grandma Kitty, and before we dive in, take a second to subscribe if cases like this intrigue you. It helps me keep these stories coming, and while you're at it, tell me where you're watching from. That's how we find our neighbors here in our little true crime corner. Let me tell you a little bit about the woman at the center of this story. Her name was Lula Young. Her maiden name was Welch. She was born on October 15th, 1947, in a place called Horn Lake, Mississippi. Now, Lula came from a big family. I mean, really big. She was the second of 7 children. 7 kids running around the house. Can you imagine the noise, the chaos? But it was a happy chaos. This was a close-knit family, the kind where everybody looked out for each other. Lula's father was a farmer, worked the land with his hands. Honest, hard work. Her mother stayed home and took care of the house and all those children. Traditional family living a traditional life in small-town Mississippi. It was a simple upbringing, but a good one. Now let me tell you how Lula met the man she would marry. His name was John Young. And get this, they did not meet as teenagers or adults. They met as children, little kids playing together in the yard, running around, laughing, being kids. Year after year, they played together. And somewhere along the way, that childhood friendship turned into something more. By the time they were teenagers, they knew they wanted to be together. And right after Lula finished high school, they got married. It seemed like a fairy tale beginning. Their marriage started off very traditional. Lula managed the home while John worked in construction. His job required him to travel a lot, which meant Lula often held down the fort by herself. But she did not mind. That was just how things were done back then. In 1970, their family started growing. Lula became pregnant and gave birth to a son. A few years later, they welcomed a daughter, 2 beautiful children. Life was good. At some point, the couple decided they wanted more opportunities for their family. So they made the decision to move. They did not go far, though. They settled in Horn Lake, which was only about 30 minutes from their hometown of Tunica. Still close enough to visit family, but in a bigger city with more possibilities. Now let me tell you about the kind of woman Lula was. She was sociable, outgoing, the kind of person who walks into a room and makes friends with everybody. When they moved to Horn Lake, she quickly won the affection of her new neighbors. People just liked her. She had that warmth about her. Lula became well known in the community. She worked as an ambulance paramedic, helping people in their worst moments. On top of that, she volunteered as an accountant for the local fire department, gave her time and skills to serve others. She had a wide circle of friends. Everyone who met her seemed to adore her. Lula was one of those rare people who was genuinely well liked by everyone. In 1978, something happened that would change the course of Lula's life, though she had no idea at the time just how much. A woman named Linda Leam moved in next door. Linda became Lula's new neighbor, and right from the start, they hit it off. The two women had children around the same age, so they had plenty in common. Playdates for the kids turned into coffee chats for the moms. They got along immediately, started spending more and more time together, and before long, their friendship deepened into something special. They became best friends, inseparable, the kind of friends who tell each other everything. Let me tell you a little about Linda. She had 2 children of her own. Her husband worked as a truck driver, so he was often away from home. Linda worked from home as an accountant while taking care of her kids. Now, this friendship seemed like a blessing. 2 women supporting each other through life, raising their children together, being there for each other. But what Linda was really thinking would shock everyone. Before I tell you what happened next, tap that like button real quick. And if you are not subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that button too. Trust me, you are going to want to hear where this story goes. Now, Lula's life was not always easy. She faced some serious challenges along the way. After 15 years of marriage, Lula and John separated. 15 years. That is a long time to be with someone. And remember, this was her childhood sweetheart, the boy she had played with in the yard, the only man she had ever loved. The divorce was a huge blow for Lula, absolutely devastating. She had to rebuild her entire life as a single woman and a single mother. Everything she thought she knew about her future had just crumbled, and the financial pressure was intense. Suddenly, all the responsibilities that she used to share with John fell directly on her shoulders. She had previously relied on her husband. Now she had to manage everything alone. The bills, the kids, the house, all of it. It was a difficult time. Lula was at a breaking point. She did not know how she was going to get through it. But here is where Linda stepped in. Linda was always there for her. Even in the darkest moments when Lula felt like giving up, Linda was right by her side, offering a helping hand, lending an ear, providing unwavering support. Their friendship strengthened during this difficult period. They grew even closer than before. And it was Linda who encouraged Lula to take a nursing course. See, Linda had taken the same course herself and was earning a decent salary from it. She told Lula it could change her life. Lula took her friend's advice. She enrolled in the course and completed it. She became a nurse first, then worked her way up to becoming an ambulance paramedic. She also started volunteering at the fire department as an accountant. Thanks to Linda's encouragement, Lula got back on her feet. She took control of her life again, found her strength, built a career. Lula was deeply grateful for Linda's support and friendship. She truly believed Linda had saved her during the worst time of her life. But just as everything seemed to be going well, another challenge came crashing down. In 1988, Lula was diagnosed with breast cancer. Cancer, that word that nobody ever wants to hear. Lula had to undergo chemotherapy and radiotherapy. If you know anything about cancer treatment, you know how brutal it can be. Exhausting, draining. It takes everything out of you. But Lula faced it bravely. She refused to give up. This woman had already survived so much in her life: a divorce, financial hardship, starting over from scratch. She was not about to let cancer defeat her. Her family was deeply affected by her illness. Her children were worried sick about their mother. Everyone rallied around her. And guess who was right there by her side through all of it? Linda. Linda cared for Lula during her treatment. She supported her in every way possible. Did the shopping when Lula was too weak to leave the house. checked on her constantly, made sure she had everything she needed. Linda was Lula's rock, her anchor, the person she could count on no matter what, or so it seemed. After 6 long years of battling the disease, Lula finally got the news she had been praying for. She was in remission. The cancer was gone. It was fantastic news. She had won her fight. After everything she had been through, fortune was finally smiling on Lula Young. She had renewed strength to live, a future to look forward to. Life was good again. And then came December 19th, 1994. Around 6 o'clock in the morning, the residents of Horn Lake were jolted awake by a powerful explosion. People rushed outside in a panic, still in their pajamas, hearts pounding. And that is when they saw it. Lula's house was engulfed in flames, fire everywhere, smoke billowing into the cold December sky. Someone called the fire department immediately. Trucks came screaming down the street. Firefighters rushed to the scene and started battling the blaze. Their main concern was Lula. Was she inside? Was she okay? When they finally made it into the house, they found her. She was on the floor beside her bed. It appeared that she had tried to get out, tried to escape the flames, but she did not make it. She collapsed right there on that floor and never got up again. Lula Young was dead, 47 years old. Within minutes, Linda arrived at the scene. She was devastated, crying, completely heartbroken. She told everyone that she had been at home when she heard the news. The neighbors had called her because they knew how close the two women were. And they were close. 16 years of friendship. Linda and Lula had been through everything together. Everyone was shaken by what had happened. The whole neighborhood, the whole community. This was Lula Young, the woman everyone loved, the survivor who had beaten cancer, gone in a fire. But Lula's family was confused. They could not believe what had happened. Something was not adding up. How did an explosion occur in that house? There was no gas. No obvious reason for such a violent blast. What could have caused it? They did not yet know what investigators were finding inside those charred remains. When firefighters and investigators examined what was left of the house, they found something strange. There was an electric heater placed near the front door, and right next to it was a propane gas cylinder. Now let me ask you something. How many people do you know who keep propane cylinders inside their home? Not in the garage, not outside by the grill, but inside the house near the front door. Very few people do that. It is dangerous. And it got stranger. The valve on that propane cylinder was twisted and cracked. Gas had been leaking out. This was not normal wear and tear. It seemed deliberate. Investigators started getting suspicious. This fire was not accidental. It looked like arson. Then the autopsy results came back, and things got even more troubling. Lula had suffered first and second-degree burns. But here is the thing. That is not what killed her. The cause of death was carbon monoxide poisoning. She died from breathing in the smoke and fumes. And there was something else. They found sleeping pills in her system. Sleeping pills. Now, why would a woman have sleeping pills in her system right before a fire broke out in her home? Did she take them herself, or did someone give them to her? Her family firmly rejected any possibility of suicide. They knew Lula. Despite everything she had been through over the years, she had always remained optimistic. She looked toward the future with hope, especially now that she was in remission. She had just beaten cancer. Why would she give up now? Something was very wrong here. The investigation continued because there were too many unanswered questions. Now I have to ask you something. Lula had just beaten cancer after 6 years. She was finally healthy, finally looking forward to the future. Why would she take sleeping pills before going to bed on a night when her house would mysteriously explode. Does that make any sense to you? Tell me what you think in the comments. Detectives started talking to neighbors, asking questions, trying to piece together what happened that night. But progress was slow. Nobody seemed to know anything useful. Then, out of nowhere, a phone call changed everything. An insurance agent named Brenda Driver contacted the police. She said she had heard about the fire and Lula Young's death, and she had some information that might be important. 4 months before the fire, Brenda had sold Lula a life insurance policy. She had gone to Lula's home, met with her, done all the paperwork, standard stuff. But here is where it gets strange. 2 weeks after the fire, after Lula was supposedly dead and buried, Brenda saw her at a Walmart supermarket, walking around, shopping, very much alive. The same woman she had sold the policy to, the same face, the same person. Brenda was confused, so she called the phone number she had for Lula, and guess who answered? Linda. Linda claimed to be Lula's sister. She confirmed that yes, Lula had died in the fire. Very tragic, very sad. But Brenda knew what she saw. She had seen Lula alive in that store, or at least she thought she had. So Brenda told the police everything, including the details of that life insurance policy. And those details made investigators' jaws drop. The policy was worth $700,000. That is a massive amount of money. And there was an additional $200,000 payout if the death was accidental. Almost $1 million total. And who was listed as the beneficiary? Who would receive all that money when Lula died? Her sister, Linda Leam. Except Lula did not have a sister named Linda. Linda was not her sister. Linda was her neighbor, her best friend. Something was very wrong here. Investigators showed Brenda a photograph of Linda Leam, and Brenda's eyes went wide. She immediately confirmed it. This was the woman she knew as Lula Young. This was the woman she had sold the policy to. This was also the woman she saw in Walmart 2 weeks after the fire. Linda had impersonated Lula, but it got worse. That life insurance policy required a medical examination. You cannot just sign papers for a policy that big. A nurse has to examine you, check your health, make sure you are a legitimate candidate for coverage. Investigators tracked down that nurse. They showed her the same photograph of Linda, and the nurse identified her immediately. That was the woman she had examined, the woman who called herself Lula Young. Linda had impersonated Lula for the medical checkup too. She had pretended to be her best friend to pass the physical examination. When investigators questioned Linda's relatives, they discovered something interesting. Linda had not exactly kept this deception a secret. She had told people about it, but she had an explanation. Linda claimed that Lula knew about everything. In fact, she said it was Lula's idea. According to Linda, Lula knew that because of her cancer history, she would never be able to get a life insurance policy for such a high amount. So she supposedly asked Linda to pretend to be her, take the medical exam in her place, get the policy approved. Linda said the money was meant for Lula's children. She was just helping out a sick friend. But Lula's family did not buy it for 1 second. Lula had never mentioned any life insurance policy to them. Not once. Her children knew nothing about it. If this was Lula's plan, why would she keep it secret from her own kids? The people who were supposedly going to benefit from it? Linda's explanation did not add up. Police immediately contacted the insurance company to stop any payout, but they were too late. Linda had already collected $275,000. And what did she do with it? Did she give it to Lula's children like she claimed she would? No. She used the money to buy rental properties for herself. Lula's children never saw a single penny. This was no longer just a suspicious death investigation. This was now insurance fraud, and the FBI got involved. Now, what investigators discovered next proved that this was definitely no accident. But before I tell you, if you are still watching, tap that like button for me. Just a quick tap. It really helps get this story out to more people. And if you are not subscribed, go ahead and hit that button, because what comes next is going to make your blood boil. Now, fire inspectors knew this was arson. They knew that fire was set deliberately, but proving it was another matter entirely. And they still did not know who actually started that fire. Linda had an alibi. She claimed she was at home with her family when the explosion happened. Neighbors had called her with the news. She showed up at the scene crying and devastated. How could she have done it if she was not even there? But investigators were not buying it. Something in their gut told them Linda was behind this. They just needed solid evidence to prove it. So they did something clever. They made a public statement saying the fire had been caused by a faulty extension lead, an accident, nothing suspicious, case closed. But it was a lie. They said this on purpose. They wanted Linda to feel safe, to let her guard down, to think she had gotten away with it. And then they waited. Patience would pay off. 2 years went by, 2 long years of watching and waiting. And then on January 16th, 1997, a man walked into the police station. He was an acquaintance of both Lula and Linda. He had known them for years, and he had something to tell investigators that made their blood run cold. He said that Linda had once approached him with a question. She asked him if he would be willing to kill Lula. Can you believe that? Just casually asking someone if they would commit murder. Linda had justified it by saying it would be a mercy killing. Lula had cancer, she said. She was suffering. Killing her would put an end to her pain. It would be doing her a favor. When the man refused, Linda asked him another question. She wanted to know how someone could burn down a house without getting caught. This was huge, but investigators still needed stronger evidence. The man agreed to wear a wire and have another conversation with Linda. Try to get her to confess on tape. It did not work. Linda was extremely cautious. She did not say anything incriminating. She was too smart for that. But then a second informant came forward. His name was David Vincent. He was currently sitting in prison and had information he wanted to trade for a reduced sentence. Prisoners do this all the time. They hear things, they know things, and sometimes they are willing to talk. On February 3rd, 1997, an officer went to the prison to speak with Vincent, and what Vincent told him cracked the case wide open. He gave them a name, the name of the person who actually killed Lula Young, Charles Wayne Dunn. Vincent said he had heard this directly from Charles himself. The two men had worked together at some point, and during that time, Charles had confided in him. He told Vincent that he had done something terrible, something he deeply regretted. He had killed Lula Young, and he did not do it on his own. Linda had hired him, paid him to do it. She gave him specific instructions. The death had to look like an accident, otherwise the insurance company would not pay out. Charles was 28 years old at the time, a handyman who had done work for Linda in the past. He was currently out on parole. And here is an interesting detail. When investigators pulled up Charles's records, guess whose name was listed as his emergency contact? Linda Leam. Now investigators needed Charles to confess. They had Vincent's word, but that was not enough. They needed to hear it from Charles himself. So they set up a sting operation. Charles's parole officer scheduled a routine meeting with him at the office. Nothing unusual about that. Parolees have to check in regularly. But when Charles arrived, David Vincent was already sitting there in the waiting room. He was wearing a hidden recording device. He pretended to be just another parolee waiting for his own meeting. The two men started talking, and Vincent skillfully steered the conversation toward Lula's murder. He did it cleverly. He said he was thinking about killing someone himself. Then he casually asked Charles, "Do you remember when you told me you killed that woman, Lula Young?" And Charles did not deny it. He did not deny it. Now I have to stop here and ask you something. Linda pretended to be Lula's best friend for 16 years. She was there through her divorce. She was there through her cancer treatment. She cared for her, supported her, and the whole time she was planning to kill her for insurance money. How do you trust anyone after hearing something like this? On February 20th, 1997, officers showed up at Charles's home. They brought him in for questioning, and he was a mess, extremely nervous, panicking. He knew why they were there. Charles started talking. He told investigators that he had met Lula back in 1993. She had hired him to do some household work around her place, fix things, odd jobs. He got to know her as a client. He also knew Linda. And in 1994, Linda came to him with an offer. She would pay him $5,000 to kill Lula. $5,000. That was the price she put on her best friend's life. Linda gave him the same justification she had given the other man. She said Lula was suffering from cancer. She said Lula had asked her to help end her suffering, but Linda could not bring herself to do it personally. She needed someone else to do the dirty work. Charles admitted everything. On December 18, 1994, the night before the fire, Charles went to Lula's house. He brought a propane cylinder with him. He told Lula that Linda had asked him to store it at her place for a while. Just a favor between friends. Lula had no reason to suspect anything. Then he gave her sleeping pills. Maybe he put them in a drink. Maybe he told her they were something else. However he did it, Lula took them, and she fell asleep, deeply asleep, unable to wake up. Once she was unconscious, Charles got to work. He opened the valve on the propane cylinder and let the gas leak out. He placed an electric heater nearby, put newspapers underneath it, everything in position, a ticking time bomb. Then he left the house. The next morning, December 19th, the explosion happened. Just like he planned, just like Linda wanted. The day after the fire, Charles went to Linda's house to collect his payment. She gave him $1,000 in cash. The remaining $4,000 would be paid later in smaller amounts. Could not be too obvious about it. It was Charles who suggested using the electric heater. He bought it himself with money Linda had given him ahead of time. As for the propane cylinder, Charles could not remember who actually purchased it, but a witness came forward later who remembered something interesting. Linda had mentioned buying a grill as a Christmas gift for her daughter and son-in-law, and she said she had stored the propane tank at Lula's house. Christmas gift. How thoughtful. Except that propane tank was not for any grill. It was a murder weapon. And here is something else, Charles revealed. This was not the only fire Linda had arranged. 2 years after Lula's death, there was another fire. This time at Linda's own daughter's house. And according to Charles, that fire was also set deliberately to claim insurance money. Linda had a pattern. Fire. Insurance claim. Profit. After Charles's confession, police wanted him to wear a wire and have a conversation with Linda. Get her on tape, admitting something, anything. Charles agreed. He went to Linda and told her that he felt guilty about what he had done. The weight of killing Lula was eating at him. Linda did not directly confess. She was careful with her words, but she also did not deny knowing what he was talking about. And then she did something that showed her guilt clear as day. She gave Charles $2,000 and told him to leave town. Why would an innocent person pay someone to disappear? Why would she give him money unless she was trying to cover something up? On March 11th, 1997, police arrived at Linda's door and arrested her. She was in complete shock. She kept repeating that she had no idea what was happening, playing dumb until the very end. During the search of her home, officers found exactly what they were looking for. They found 2 life insurance policies for Lula Young. One worth $75,000, another worth $500,000. Linda was listed as the primary beneficiary on both. They also found a third policy that named Linda's husband as a beneficiary for an additional $200,000. And there was something else, a power of attorney document. Lula had apparently granted Linda power of attorney, giving her control over certain matters. Whether Lula actually signed this willingly or whether it was forged, nobody could say for certain. During the trial, insurance agents came forward to testify against Linda. One agent said that back in 1992, Linda had contacted him asking about taking out insurance for her sister. She claimed her sister was Lula Young. She gave Lula's address as her own and introduced herself as Lula Young. This agent had even visited Linda's home, and he noticed something on the wall, a family tree, displayed right there for everyone to see. And on that family tree, Lula Young was listed as Linda's sister. She had created a fake family tree to support her lie. Another agent testified that Linda had applied for an additional $200,000 policy. When he visited her home, she introduced herself as Lula Young. On the application, Linda's husband, Gary Leam, was listed as Lula Young's brother-in-law, and Linda Leam was listed as Lula's sister. The web of lies was incredible. She had created an entire fake identity, a fake family relationship, all for insurance money. But wait, it gets worse. During the search of Linda's home, officers found something else. More life insurance policies, this time worth $650,000. But these were not in Lula's name. They were in the name of Robert Stovall. And the beneficiaries? Linda and her husband. One of these policies covered accidental death. Officers also found a fake identification card in the name of Robert Stovall, and guess whose photograph was on it? Charles Wayne Dunn. The address on the fake ID was Linda's home address. Linda had been planning another murder. Further investigation revealed that Linda had conspired with Charles to kill this Robert Stovall person. He had been listed as her son-in-law on one of the insurance applications. Linda had offered Charles $10,000 to kill Robert Stovall, double what she paid for Lula, and Charles had agreed. With the money Linda gave him, Charles bought a 1979 Toyota Celica. The plan was to use it to stage a fatal car accident, make it look like an accidental death so the insurance would pay out. Luckily, this murder was never carried out. Robert Stovall was still alive and safe in Tennessee. He had no idea someone had been planning his death for insurance money. And there was no evidence that Linda's actual daughter or her husband were involved in any of these schemes. They were innocent. At trial, Linda put up a fight. She claimed that Charles was solely responsible for Lula's death. She said that Charles knew about the insurance policies and came up with the murder plan on his own. According to her, his plan was to kill Linda and her husband so that he and her daughter, whom he was allegedly having an affair with, could inherit all the money. It was a bold defense. Blame everything on the handyman. Linda did admit to impersonating Lula. She could not deny that. There were too many witnesses, but she insisted she had only done it to help a sick friend obtain life insurance that she could not get on her own due to her cancer history. She claimed the money was meant for Lula's children. She was just being a good friend. But Lula's children had no knowledge of these policies. They never received a single dollar, and Linda had already used the payout to buy rental properties for herself. The evidence was overwhelming. In the autumn of 1997, Linda Leam pleaded guilty to committing insurance fraud in the Lula Young case. She was sentenced to 27 months in prison and ordered to pay $275,000 in restitution to the insurance companies she had defrauded. But that was just the beginning. 2 years later, on August 31st, 1999, a jury found Linda Leam guilty of capital murder and conspiracy to commit capital murder. The sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. She would die behind bars. As for Charles Wayne Dunn, the man who actually started the fire and killed Lula, he was also sentenced to life in prison. But his sentence came with the possibility of parole. Someday, he might walk free. Linda never will. Now, I have one final question for you. Linda was there for Lula through everything: the divorce, the cancer, the financial struggles. For 16 years, she played the role of loyal best friend. And the whole time, she was plotting and scheming, waiting for the right moment to cash in. How do you spot someone like this? Someone who pretends to care about you while planning your death? Is it even possible to know? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Let us take a moment to remember Lula Young. Her life was tragically cut short by greed and betrayal. But she was so much more than a victim. She was a woman who faced life's challenges with resilience and strength. She survived a divorce. She beat cancer. She raised 2 children on her own. She built a career helping others as a paramedic. She was a friend who placed her trust in others, and she deserved love and loyalty in return. Though justice was eventually served, nothing can undo the loss suffered by those who truly cared for her. Her children lost their mother. Her siblings lost their sister. Her community lost a woman who had given so much of herself to others. There are lessons in Lula's story that I think we all need to hear. Sometimes the people we consider our best friends are not truly who they seem to be. Greed can lead people to do unimaginable things. Even people who appear kind and caring on the surface can be hiding dark intentions underneath. Trust must be earned over time. And even then, pay attention to the signs. Pay attention to how people behave when money is involved. Pay attention to your instincts. Linda Leam will spend the rest of her life in prison. She will never be free again. Charles Wayne Dunn is also behind bars, though he may someday be released. Justice was served. It took time. It took patience. It took informants coming forward with the truth. But in the end, both of them were held accountable for what they did to Lula. Lula's memory lives on, not in the crime that took her life, but in the hearts of those who truly knew her, in the kindness she showed to others, in the lessons her story leaves behind. May she be remembered not for how she died, but for the life she lived. What started as a friendship between 2 neighbors ended with one of them in the grave and the other in prison. 16 years of pretending, $700,000 as the motive, a propane tank, and some sleeping pills as the weapons. Lula Young deserved so much better than what she got. She deserved a friend who actually cared about her, not someone who saw her as a payday. Thank you so much for listening to this story today. I know it was a heavy one, a story about betrayal from the person you trust the most. It does not get much worse than that. But these stories need to be told. They remind us to be careful, to pay attention, to never let greed or desperation blind us to what is really happening around us. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you from the bottom of my heart. And if you have not subscribed yet, please consider doing so. Hit that like button too if you have not already. Until next time, stay safe out there. Be careful who you trust. And remember, not everyone who calls themselves your friend actually is one. Rest in peace, Lula Young. You deserved so much better. Goodbye for now.